Try that. Okay. Well, I have 10:02, so I think we will begin. Thank you everyone for attending. This is part two um, of our meetings discussing the Grand Traverse County Housing Growth Opportunity Corridors. I am hopeful that Ryan Kilpatrick will be joining us. I haven't seen him pop on yet. I'll just send that message quickly.
Oh, I'm here, Susan.
Oh, you are? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So the information that we will be presenting with Ryan as our primary presenter, we hope will benefit the folks on the line, which are our leaders at county, city, township level, builders, developers, some folks in the nonprofit sector, and the for-profit sector. I'm Susan Lighthouser Yee. I'm here in my capacity as Housing Ready Tech Support for Housing North. With me, I have Brian Kilpatrick, CEO of Flywheel, which is a neighborhood design firm. Sam Callan couldn't join us today, but I do want to recognize him also with Flywheel. He's a researcher and an excellent mapping talent that has been instrumental in putting the map together. And we have Maxwell Cameron, Community Development Corridor Coordinator for Grand Traverse County. And my colleague Heather Spooner, who's our MC, events planner, and coordinator for this meeting. This is an effort. Identifying these housing growth opportunity corridors is an effort to find the path of less resistance, where road, water, and sewer infrastructure meet up with underutilized or vacant land. The information is not proprietary, but it is pulled from various public sources with the intent of making the information necessary for planning, policy, and development decisions, making it more transparent and readily available. I'm going to hand off to Maxwell, if I may, for some comments from the county level, and then Ryan, we will turn you loose to present.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Wanted to say good morning to everyone and thank you so much for jumping on and walking through this presentation with us today. My name is Maxwell Cameron. I'm the Community Development Coordinator with Grand Traverse County. And our Economic Development Corporation was one of the main funders for this project. And we're so excited to be at the point that we are today of showing you and walking through the mapping associated with the corridors and talking through some of the decisions that were made leading up to this point. I also want to share with you that the county is looking at what our role is in this project moving forward and how do we help maintain the map? How do we help support communities in making decisions based upon some of the information that we've collected here? And so it comes at an interesting time for us. At the county level, we're exploring opportunities to put together a community development, community coordination department. And we see continuing this work and being, the body that helps receive updates for any changes that take place on the township level, so that we can continue to refresh this map, moving forward and update any changes that take place in our county at the local level. The other thing that we'll be asking for additional feedback on from participants in our call today, as well as the broader community, is just general feedback on what we've laid out here as far as our mapping and our corridors. And when, once we get that input, that means that we can kind of look at how the county can support what is happening at the local level as far as what you see or envision happening in your community, what you think is the right direction for development potentially along these corridors, or just generally what feedback you have for us associated with what's been laid out here. So more to come in those regards. I do want to turn it over to Ryan, but before I do that, I just want to thank everybody that has worked on this project and echo what Susan has said in terms of the awesome team that we have from Flywheel, Ryan, and Sam. We also have our deputy administrator, Chris Forsyth. He was instrumental in bringing this project to the point where we are today. I think he's in this call somewhere. So just want to call out Chris and thank him for everything he's done associated with this project. And then finally, Housing North. Susan is awesome to work with. And just want to thank her and Heather for putting together this meeting today. And we've enjoyed working with you with this project, and continue to look forward to ways that we can partner in the future. So with that, just want to turn it over to Ryan, and we can get started on walking through some of the information in our mapping here.
All right, great. Thank you, Maxwell. Appreciate it. This is exciting. I'm very excited to share this presentation. Susan, I'm watching you out of the corner of my eye just in case I'm not sharing the right thing. You're going to like wave at me or something.
Okay. And for the group, Ryan and I spoke. I know many of the folks on this call were at the January 9th presentation, and there is quite a lengthy presentation. I think it was 72 pages. So Ryan and I spoke about just highlighting certain sections so that we'll have time to actually look at the interactive map today, and also take questions.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to go quickly through a short slide deck to give you a sense of how we got here. I do notice that my colleague Sam Callan is on the call. Once we get to the mapping component, Sam is the genius that kind of pulled all of the data sources together and has allowed us to illustrate visually where a lot of the opportunity is in Grand Traverse County. So we'll probably tag team as we're sharing the map. I'll ask him to kind of guide me around a little bit and guide you all around. But really quickly, let me give you a sense of the document that we've created before we dive into the map. We consider this to be a tool, right? It looks like a plan because it's on a map. But it's not necessarily a plan. It's a tool for both the county and each local unit of government to assess where do we have opportunities to accommodate some amount of growth based on current and future land use planning, based on zoning, based on wetlands barriers, based on slopes, all of those things. And so what we really want to do is first ground ourselves in the need and the principles. And the idea here is all of this work it rests upon the zoning atlas that Housing North and the Economic Development Corporation invested in last year, which allowed us to understand what are we currently planning and zoning for across Grand Traverse County. The good news, bad news is there's a little over 71,000 acres of vacant residential land available out there. Average density right now is 1.5 homes per acre. And so there's roughly potential for 107,000 new homes in Grand Traverse County. Meanwhile, the housing needs assessment that Housing North has funded indicates a need for about 11,000 additional housing units by 2027. Projecting that number forward to 2050 would result in roughly 20,000 additional homes. So you compare those, there's plenty of land technically, right? We're not likely to run out of land for housing in Grand Traverse County. The question is, do we really want to continue to grow the way that Grand Traverse County has grown over the last 20 or 30 years? Do we want that average kind of 1.5 homes per acre, where we're continuing to build more roads, more sewer, more water out into the periphery? And so as we started to look at where are the opportunities, we wanted to overlay these principles. First, that we're creating opportunity for everybody who works in Grand Traverse County to choose to live in Grand Traverse County. Doesn't mean that they will, but there should be an option available. And so that's all ages, wages, and life stages. Second, we want investments in infrastructure and placemaking to be smart, not, oh, we'll pay for this 50 years down the road when something else great happens, and let's just take on a bunch of debt now. We want to make sure that there are meaningful green spaces, and that's both little neighborhood pocket parks and regional parks, and trails, as well as farmland and open spaces and wetlands and all of the things that make Grand Traverse County such a gorgeous place to be and live. Those things need to be preserved over the long term. The places where we do invest, we have suggested that those should be vibrant. They should be life-giving. They should offer a lot of opportunity. And I cut and pasted this slide, so ignore that this says Kalamazoo County. We'll fix that. All of the decisions need to be locally driven. These are not county level decisions. Mostly they're local decisions, but there's also shared responsibility. And so that means we need our townships to work together across township boundaries. We need our cities and townships to work together. You don't have to plan for each other, but acknowledging where you have those kind of handshakes across municipal boundaries, there's opportunity to work together. So really quickly, this is a product type that we're really good at building in Michigan broadly. In Grand Traverse County, the average price of a home like this is now over $500,000, which means you've got to earn $150,000 to buy the typical new construction home. And when it's on sewer and water, we often require it to have 80 to 150 or 80 to 100 feet of frontage. And we'll talk about what does that cost. Whereas there is also demand for product like this when built brand new. Typically, this kind of product costs somewhere between $295 and $395 to build. It's less expensive. It's not cheaper. It's less expensive because it consumes less land, it requires less infrastructure, and the square footage is smaller. It doesn't have to be subsidized. It can be, but it can also just be purely market rate and be much less expensive than the traditional single-family home on a large lot. And then there are also these missing middle housing typologies that are even less expensive. Sometimes the building itself, the cost per square foot is more, but each individual unit costs less. So you can see when we compare these three, we're good at building single-family homes. We're not very good at building two-family or townhomes. But this offers a potential savings of $1,600 a month, just when we say yes to it. This offers a potential savings of up to $2,000 a month. And it requires us to say yes to it. But I also want to acknowledge that these housing typologies don't make sense everywhere, right? There are lots of places in most communities where we're not going to accommodate a lot of two-family or townhouses or multifamily. And so the question is, where are the places where it could make sense to allow these housing types to exist so that we can achieve these kinds of savings for local households? And so we have to think about this carefully. What we also want to acknowledge, National Association of Realtors does a study every single year. They take a poll of likely future home buyers, both existing homeowners who are going to buy something else and first-time home buyers. 56% of the respondents to that survey indicate that they would prefer a walkable, amenity-rich neighborhood, and they would be willing to pay more for that kind of housing and tolerate less square footage, less private green space if it meant they got to be closer to the things that they care about, preferably within a safe, comfortable walk of those things. But meanwhile, only 3% of the land area in Grand Traverse County actually accommodates those kinds of neighborhoods. Neighborhoods where things are close together, where your kids can safely walk to school, and you can walk and get a cup of coffee or go out to dinner in the evening or go to the library, or even just walk to the local regional trail. So there's a mismatch between what people are asking for and what we're providing for. But that actually works really well when we're thinking about how do we create choices for people at all incomes, at all stages of life, and what would Grand Traverse County look like if we actually offered those kinds of choices? So one of the other important dynamics here is household demographics. Across Grand Traverse County, roughly 70% of all households are either single adult households with no kids at home or two adults with no kids at home. Just under a quarter of the population is families with kids. And so as we think about, again, what are the housing typologies that we need to accommodate the demographics we have, more single family homes are going to be important, but it doesn't have to be 80 or 90% of the product that gets produced. We can produce other housing typologies. But a critical factor here, and the one that local units of government have the most influence over, is land. Is how much land do I have to have per residential unit or home? And what am I allowed to build on that land? And when we're building on new land, the question is, if we have to add sewer and water infrastructure and we have to build a new road, whether it's public or private, it costs about $128,000 per 100 feet of road to build brand new sewer, water, and road. And so when we do that, if we're just putting single family homes on that road frontage, it takes on average 83 years to generate enough tax revenue to pay for the cost of that infrastructure. Whereas if on that same 100 feet we were to allow 3 homes, it takes on average 39 years to pay for the same cost of infrastructure. So 100 feet of sewer, water, and road costs roughly the same no matter what we put on it. But the amount of tax revenue that gets generated is dramatically different based on our development patterns. And just to show you what this looks like, Sam has done a bunch of work evaluating taxable value across Grand Traverse County. We'll give you a quick illustration. Here, what you're seeing is taxable value on a per acre basis. Obviously, right downtown Traverse City and the near neighborhood is generating more value than most of the rest of the county on a per acre basis. But just as a more specific example, we took a couple of photos in downtown Kingsley because, I think this is typical small town Americana, right? These are classic environments and they represent kind of the two different arms. This is a little bit more suburban. It's still pretty close to downtown, but it's surrounded by parking, right? We've got this little building in the middle surrounded by parking. It's generating $1,800 in taxable value per acre. Whereas this little Main Street environment is producing 32% more taxable value. The buildings are older. Arguably, they've probably had less investment over the last 20 years, just based on kind of the outward appearance. The lots are smaller, but on a per acre basis, these are producing 32% more taxable value than this land use pattern is. And so we just want to acknowledge those things as we're thinking about the future. The state is unlikely to pay for the full cost of infrastructure going forward. And so we have to make sure that we're generating enough local revenue to pay for the things that we've built. All right, so we're going to start to get into the map. I'm first going to show some slides, and then we're going to hop over into the map and take you on a tour. Sam, while I'm talking through these, I want you to think about whether it's easier for you to share your screen and walk through the map than me. We can do either one. But real quick, Sam and Susan and Maxwell and a team of folks identified these 40 corridors to review. And I want to point out a handful of things. The orange are the corridors that are served by sewer and water. The red are these little opportunities for neighborhood centers. So you got these little circles all over the place. And then the green are these opportunities for neighborhood hamlets, right? So kind of a village center style development, except these green spaces are not currently served by sewer and water, right? So they're going to need to have a lower density because they aren't supported by sewer and water, but they can still have a village style atmosphere. So you got Interlochen, Kingsley is down here. Where did it go? I'm all over the place. Kingsley and Fife Lake are down here in the bottom. There's lots of opportunity in Grand Traverse County to create a sense of place with higher taxable value per acre and per front foot of infrastructure, and with more opportunities for housing. And so the question is going to be, when we talk to local units of government, how much of this map feels appropriate to the local unit? They might say, all of you guys at the local unit might say, you know what, you guys got 80% of this wrong, but 20% of it we like. And that's going to be the question for the county and for the local unit is, where is the 20% that you like? And how do we start to build these more compact neighborhoods that are still architecturally appropriate to the landscape in Grand Traverse County, but where we're maximizing the infrastructure that already exists or the infrastructure that needs to go in, and we're not spreading out into these farms, fields, and forests on the periphery, right? How do we save our rural environment, let rural be rural, and let town be town, but the town should still reflect what we really want in Grand Traverse County. So again, 4 key elements. We want to put people first. We don't want to create neighborhoods on the side of a highway where people are going to go, 55, 70 miles an hour through the middle of a neighborhood. Not very many people want to live in that kind of environment. And so where we are putting neighborhoods, we want to think about either slowing traffic or creating some spatial separation between higher speed traffic and where a neighborhood goes. Want to integrate nature wherever possible. This is really important to social connectivity, mental health, and well-being. Allowing for smaller lots is actually one of the most cost-effective ways to use infrastructure. It's also one of the most cost-effective ways to create more choice. And then recognizing that when we do allow compact development, proximity is paramount, meaning people don't want to live close together just for the sake of living close together. They want to live close together if it means they get to be closer to the things they really care about. And that's things like shops and restaurants, libraries and schools, parks and playgrounds. When we're creating zoning that allows for all of those things to be in a 5 to 10 minute walk or bike ride or a quick hop in the car, where you don't have to be in a traffic jam for 30 minutes to get to the things that you really want, that's when these compact neighborhood development patterns start to make sense for a lot of people. Now, there aren't a lot of places in Grand Traverse County that look like this image on the left, but I can think of 1 or 2. And so part of what we want is for the community to start thinking about, do we need all of this space in between buildings to be dedicated to parking cars? On average in the US, we have between 9 and 21 parking spaces per person. Not all of us drive. I have 2 kids that don't drive, and yet we have parking spaces for them. And so the question is, can we fill in some of those spaces? This is a more urban example than you're probably ever going to see in Grand Traverse County. But it's a good example of where the kinds of places we have opportunity. So really quickly, we defined 4 neighborhood types. I'll show you the map of what those neighborhood types look like, where we think maybe they could go. The first is town center, right? And you're going to see this makes sense in downtown Traverse City. There might be a couple of other locations on high-speed traffic arterials adjacent to those places where additional town centers could make sense. These are higher density, they're taller buildings. There's lots of opportunity for this kind of development, but not in that many places. And we'll show you what it looks like. Now, alternatively, there's this more village residential style, which feels more small town, feels more quaint. It feels a little bit more of the place, grounded and rooted in the local community dynamics. Less density, less height, but still the buildings are right up next to each other. You're still getting 2 to 3 stories. And generally, these are smaller lots. Missing middle is a really important housing typology that we talk about a lot, but we don't actually zone for it in very many places. What you're looking at here, this is 2 townhomes. This is a 4-plex. Here's the front of the 4-plex. You've got 2 units on the downstairs, 2 units on the upstairs. These fit in single-family neighborhoods. They don't belong in every single-family neighborhood on any lot. But very often in those transitional spaces between a village center kind of an atmosphere, whoops, I'm all over, between this space and a single family neighborhood, that block or 2 in between is a great place to allow for these kinds of housing. or on the corridor between village centers, right? So you might have every half mile or every mile, there's like a little place that has shops and restaurants and a library or something like that. In the stretches between that, where you don't have open space, you can have these kinds of missing middle housing typologies. And then lastly, these small lot single family homes. We're very good at big lot single family homes. And what we want to encourage is more places that have sewer and water to say, you know what, not everybody wants to mow an acre of lawn. A lot of people want to have a little garden, a shared green space, and not all of the maintenance obligation. And that actually tends to be a lot more cost effective. So here's what the map looks like. And again, these are the opportunities that we found on the corridors. It doesn't mean that there is a plan to develop any of these. The plans come from the local unit of government. We just said, hey, we found opportunities with more than 7,500 acres that are either vacant or underutilized and served by sewer and water or in these hamlet environments. Here's Interlochen. You've got these little green spots that don't have sewer and water, but could be hamlet kind of an environment. And notice the purple is the town center. The blue are village centers, and we'll go through these one by one real quick. Orange is on corridor, meaning kind of that missing middle typology could work. Again, could is the operative word. And then these buffer spaces, these darker orange, that's where all of that small lot single family could go. And so if local units of government said, yep, you guys got everything right, we love all of it, there's a potential for 80,000 additional homes. Now, at the top of this, we said we don't need that many, right? I think it was 11,000 are needed countywide. So what we're really doing is saying, okay, can we identify 1/8 of these properties that could make sense and begin to plan for the next 10 or 20 years what that might look like? When we take just vacant parcels, right? So this one is vacant and underutilized, meaning I was just in the Interlochen neighborhood the other day, and this is a good example where this one corner is 40 acres down here, and there's a Tom's grocery store. The Tom's only occupies maybe an acre or two, and there's 40 acres there that's technically not vacant or it's developed. It's heavily underutilized, right? There's a lot of opportunity there. But truly vacant parcels, my mouse is so sensitive. Truly vacant parcels, there's 2,800 acres with potential for 42,000 additional homes. And so again, it's just a matter of local units deciding which of these opportunities are opportunities that we actually want to execute on. Again, we've talked a little bit about these hamlets. They're not currently served by infrastructure. And so we'll show some examples of what that could look like. And then Sam has been working on some development scenarios. What does a moderate development scenario look like versus an aggressive scenario? One of the things I want to point out here is the city of Traverse City, if they wanted to plan for it, has all of these opportunities along these corridors that essentially doesn't require much change in single family neighborhoods, right? So you can see these little orange dots in here. These are opportunities for small lot single family infill, but generally there's not much change being proposed as an opportunity in the single family neighborhoods. It's primarily on the corridors where you could do missing middle or town centers or village centers. But then we did the same thing in some other places, right? Where are the opportunities in Acme? You've got lots of these single family opportunities kind of out and around on the periphery. You've got some of these on corridor opportunities, and maybe if the township decided it was appropriate, you could have a town center or a village center right here on M72. Similarly, Chum's Corner, there's lots of opportunity. This could become a town center at this intersection. Now, this would be different than a town center that you would find in Traverse City. It's got to be designed differently because you've got a lot of traffic coming through this intersection. And so the uses that are right up on the highway probably are going to continue to be traditional auto-oriented kind of commercial patterns. But a lot of these uses behind could be more neighborhood oriented. Some of this stuff behind here could be much more neighborhood oriented. this could become its own little hamlet, right? You can start to see where some of these opportunities are. Fife Lake has a lot of potential opportunities embedded, as well as Kingsley. And then Interlaken, as I mentioned earlier, there's a decent amount of land available there that could be a good opportunity. So now I'm going to show you a couple of examples, and then we're just going to dive into the map and we'll take questions and do a lot of stuff. All right. So the first one, this is Plainview West, City of Traverse City off of Garfield Avenue, over near the airport. So this is what we have today. It's a total of almost 17 acres. There are no homes on this property today. It's got a taxable value of $5.5 million. And this is a pretty typical kind of strip commercial development. We've got a lot of surface parking. Whoops, didn't want to show you that yet. Just kind of want to point out the amount of land here that has technically been developed. It's been paved, but it's not really being used. I mean, this is a sunny day. This is probably getting close to high season. Very few of the parking spaces on this site are actually being utilized. And so we said, well, what if we did something different with this property? Now, keep in mind, one, this kind of a transformation takes time, right? It's not something a developer comes in and does all at once in the matter of a couple of years. This would take time. And I'm actually going to come back to the building mix to kind of show you what this progression kind of feels like, right? So you might start on one side of the site, and over time, you're building in these housing choices that illustrate what are our opportunities, what are the things that we can do. And one of the important things about this development pattern is we go from 0 households to somewhere between 300 and 400 households on the same 16 acres. We go from $5.5 million of taxable value to almost $62 million in taxable value. Tax that goes to the county jumps from $25,000 to $285,000. This should say city goes from $310 to $3.5 million. Our infrastructure costs, the cost of maintaining infrastructure here, we're not building new public roads through the middle of the site. We're leveraging a lot of the existing asphalt. The interior of the site is private development. So the tax to infrastructure obligation to the local community and the county goes from 5x to 66x, right? So we're creating all of this additional value, some of which the city might say, hey, we're willing to enter into a tax increment finance agreement for a limited period of time in order to pay for some of this transformation. But pretty quickly, within 10 to 15 years, most of this is coming onto the tax rolls. I'm going to just go back to this slide to give you a sense of the diversity of housing options, right? So we've got 20 townhouses, 9 individual single-family homes. These are kind of down here. 29 mixed-use apartments, 2 12-plexes, 2 7-plexes, several small retail buildings that are just retail, some existing buildings. We kept Randy's Diner over here, and the Pine Hill Gardens, this remains. And then there's also this central green in the middle. There's lots of opportunity for housing choice in this neighborhood. And there are single family homes adjacent, right? So these people now have the ability to walk 1 block over and can get to a retail storefront or a restaurant or a cafe or whatever it is. So single family homes continues to be a dominant pattern in this neighborhood, just not on this particular 16-acre site. All right, now I got to skip through these slides again. Interlaken. So I mentioned earlier, Tom's grocery store at this corner. Tom's is on 40 acres. The Olson Fund owns, I think this is like 20 acres over here. So in total, we've got 2 households and a taxable value of $3.2 million. And that could be transformed into a neighborhood with 140 households. We've got some traditional single-family homes with these rear-loaded garages kind of right behind the grocery store. We've got some townhomes that are attached, but still single-family owner-occupied. This is like a 12-plex kind of a building. We've got some single-story retail on the periphery. And this ends up being sort of a gateway, if you're coming from the north heading south, into the traditional village of Interlaken. and it could generate about $31-32 million of taxable value. And so the neighborhood patterns we're talking about here are village residential, probably a little bit of missing middle and some small lot single family. These are really good options or opportunities for the local community to think about. And then this other example is a 12-acre parcel in Acme Township that could be transformed. It's adjacent to land that is currently zoned for manufactured housing. Clayton Homes does a really nice modular build that starts at about $135,000 and goes up to about $240,000. But it's a traditional single family home. You can get them 24 feet wide, so they meet all the local zoning criteria. These lots are sized well enough that we can have individual septic, shared water system. This can generate $5.5 million of additional taxable value. And so the neighborhood pattern here again is smaller lot, single family. These are probably 50 by 150 foot lots at minimum. And then the last thing I want to talk about before we dive into the map and cruise around with Sam's support is getting streets right. So Grand Traverse County, pretty much everybody gets around most of the time to most of the places they go by car. And that will likely continue well into the future. However, when we build neighborhoods that require everybody to get around all of the time, always by car, what we're doing is saying, okay, every adult needs to have the expense of a car. If a family says, hey, we're going to try to go down to being a one-car household, in many neighborhoods, what that means is the adult who doesn't have a car is trapped, right? They don't have the ability to go to the grocery store. They might be able to put the kids in a stroller and walk down to a local neighborhood park, but that's iffy, right? And so what we want to be thinking about is when we're building new neighborhoods, can we build those neighborhoods in a way that a family could make the choice to not have two cars for two adults, right? Is it reasonable that they could make that choice and not make one adult trapped for 8 or 10 hours a day? These are the things we want to be thinking about. It's not that we want to make that choice for them. We just want to make the choice an opportunity for them. And so what we have to acknowledge, even though this street is more urban than we'll likely ever see in Grand Traverse County, there are elements of this street that are relevant, right? And so it's how the building is oriented. It's these street trees. It's the way the street is being used. Look, these people feel totally safe walking in the middle of the street. That's because the infrastructure invites behavior. The infrastructure tells you how to behave in this environment. Things feel close together. It feels like I have to drive slow here because the environment is giving me clues that somebody could come walking out across the sidewalk between these cars. I got to take it slow. That is valuable to families with kids. It's valuable to older people who want to be able to walk outside but don't want to be living in fear that they're going to get run over. And so we used to build these kinds of neighborhoods all the time. Generally, since the 50s, we build a lot more neighborhoods that look like this. And these are not places anybody wants to live near, right? And so the question is, how do we create neighborhoods that are accommodating cars, acknowledging we're all probably still going to get around most of the time by car, but we don't want these places on the right generally. And so this is us saying, all right, there have to be some streets that are designed for people to move through, right? There have to be some streets where I'm going 50 to 70 miles an hour no matter what. I got to get 20 miles across the county, and that needs to happen quickly. But the places where we live, where we actually get out of our cars, those need to feel like places we want to be, not places to drive through. And too often over the last 40 or 50 years, we've mixed the two, right? We designed the place to drive really fast through, but you still have to get out of your car in those places and they feel kind of terrible. And so it's thinking about, all right, where are the places that have to look like this? And let's just get people through as quickly as possible. But how many places can we build that are designed to look like this? And just acknowledging that if a town works for an 8-year-old, it works pretty darn well for everybody. So as we get into streets, we've got a little guide or a toolkit to help local units of government understand how do we actually execute on these corridor opportunities. what can we actually do at the local level? And that includes talking to property owners. It includes talking to small scale developers. It includes making investments in public spaces that trigger these kinds of developments. And it's really about starting small. Let's pick one place. Let's do it really well. We're going to demonstrate what's possible, and then we're going to keep going. And so I'm excited to see where the county goes with its position, to think about how it might support local units of government in this decision-making process. All right, with that, we're going to stop sharing. Gosh, if I can even figure out how to stop sharing.
If I give you a minute on that, Ryan, and just mention that maybe we could take some Q&A if there are any before we get into the map. And you should be able to raise your hand. So folks that maybe haven't used Zoom too much, you'll see the reactions button in that stream of icons going across the bottom, and then within reactions, you can raise your hand. And then my colleague Heather, I think, will be able to respond to that hand raise and allow you to speak and ask a question. Any before we go on to the demonstration of the map? And I'm going to throw out the caveat that, as we talk about specific parcels and the various parcels you see on the interactive map, they are mostly privately held. So we are, sharing concepts, but, certainly understand that unless we own the land, we really don't have the control to say what's going to go there. But, there are some gentle prods perhaps that could be made. Oh, and I see that it's Claire with her hand up, and unfortunately some of you are appearing with my name because of a technological glitch that I committed.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that presentation. I had one question just on kind of the process that you had gone through. I was curious when you were kind of zeroing in on like Acme and Traverse City and some of the different jurisdictions. Are you interfacing at all with the local community or the property owner, or is this just pretty preliminary at this point?
I think I can answer it. It is preliminary. We looked at so the private landowners really have not been involved yet. We've merely looked at, where water, sewer, and road infrastructure exists, and then where that aligns with vacant and underutilized land.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think and I enjoyed taking a closer look at that interactive map, and I look forward to the presentation. I think it would be great if some of the communities had the opportunity to kind of do a little bit of ground truthing, because I think I like the kind of data-driven approach to identifying opportunities for village center and town center and some of those locations. But then I think some of the on the ground truthing will be helpful in kind of really zeroing in on those high priority locations.
Yeah, 100% clear. And that's the idea, is we're kind of putting everything out on the table for then the local unit of government to say, some of this doesn't make sense for us. Let's take that off the table. But there are a few places where it could make sense, and we want to make some adjustments. We hope that's the way this works.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Maybe I'll also throw out the data is of, I would say, latter half of last year. So it's not automatically updated when new information, when circumstances change on the ground. We expect there'll be a process going forward, but it's not an immediate update.
Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to kind of echo Claire as well. I think this is doing the data-driven approach makes a lot of sense. But yeah, to have kind of us at the township level in all the different communities to update some of this, because we recently updated our master plan. We identified mixed-use centers and mixed-use neighborhoods, some of which match up when I started browsing the map, some of which are not quite. In just a quick glance at the map, I saw some parcels identified as opportunities that are actually parkland, some that are wetlands, some that are on conservation easements. So I want to clean up some of that. But and I do appreciate that. Like, yeah, it's a kind of data-driven and visionary, but they acknowledge that it's not specifically a plan because it didn't go through the whole planning process. But I am just curious, kind of maybe for the county folks on here, what does the county kind of envision as its role going forward, knowing that the like planning and zoning is at the local level, the city and the townships? Like, does the county want to coordinate like their own financial incentives? Does it involve like directing the road commission? Like some of the street design, I'm thinking like how many streets does the road commission allow for on-street parking in terms of that design? Like outside of some neighborhood streets, not a lot. So I'm just curious what the county kind of thinks as their envisions as their role going forward. Is Maxwell or Chris still on? Yeah.
Did
Okay.
you wanna-
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I
ahead.
can jump in, Steve, and yeah, you ask a lot of great questions, great points. Don't know at this point. This is why we're reestablishing community development department to really figure out like what role is there to play with county planning, right? You mentioned development incentives. Yeah, we've talked internally about the role that either the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority could play, the Land Bank Authority, or those working together to do some targeted development where appropriate in conjunction working with the local units. So yeah, Steve, great questions to be determined. Hopefully we'll know, within the next 6 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just add, we really value the visionary nature of this project, but as I kind of talked about in the onset of the presentation, there are next steps. And so one thing that I would really encourage everyone to focus on is what Ryan talked about, as far as, maybe it's not 100% of this information that we're sharing today that we're going to move forward with. Maybe it's 20%, or even if we do the math, maybe it's 1 out of 8 where we can find commonality. So to answer your question, Stephen, I think one of the next steps is for us to work in partnership with communities to see how we can utilize our incentives and our role within the county to promote the type of development that we're talking about. So we need, as part of putting this project together, we need communities to raise their hand and say, hey, we're willing to work with you, and actually talk through what Claire had mentioned, which is ground truthing this information and putting together some more specific detail on what this could actually look like. So, part of this is communities letting us know how you want to be engaged with us moving forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So Sam Callan is on the call with us. Just for reference for you guys, Sam has been working with me at Flywheel for almost 4 years. We were both in Grand Rapids when we started working together, but Sam is now out on the West Coast. So he's up very early this morning to hang out with us, and I appreciate it. Sam, do you feel okay sharing your screen, or do you want me to share? All right, he's got it.
Can you see my screen okay here?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Ryan, before you start telling me what to do, I wonder if I could show off a little bit of the data behind the scenes to answer Stephen's question about the master plans and other information.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so first I want to say everyone's going to get a link to this map. This is one of the first of these more complex maps that Flywheel has made public. So thank you to Grand Traverse County for asking us to make something cool like this. And if you have any feedback, if you see anything broken, or if you have any extra questions, please get in touch with myself or anyone from the team, because we want to make sure this is working perfectly, and your feedback will help us help other communities. So what we're looking at right here, on the left-hand side is a bunch of options and toggles, and on the right-hand side is a bunch of information and descriptions. So when you get to the map, take your time to read through the stuff on the right-hand side, mess around with the stuff on the left-hand side, and see what you can discover. But what I'm going to show you right now is, so first we have the layer with all the parcels right here. And just for Stephen's question, I'm going to turn this off really quick. And I'm going to scroll down to some of these extra contextual data layers that we have. And so, Stephen, you're absolutely right. Some of the parcels were misclassified. And we spent a lot of time trying to get as much information as possible to make this map accurate. But the truth is, this is really cutting edge. The ability to take multiple public data sets and some private data sets and combine them together like this. Maybe in 10 years, AI is going to do this like this. 5 years ago, it was impossible. So right now, we're showing kind of the cutting edge of this type of analysis. So I do want to tell you, Stephen, that we did bring in the National Protected Lands data set. We also ran an analysis showing where all the elevation might cause barriers for development. So we've got the steep slopes on there. We also have the wetland issues. And we know that wetland maps, especially at the national level, aren't perfect. And every parcel, you need to actually judge the parcel specifically and get a permit from Eagle or something to develop it. But we brought that data in. And then we also brought in the master plan data from all the local master plans. There's, when one community says an area is mixed use, it might mean something different from another community. But I tried to pull in the mixed use or the higher density locations. And so all that information came into this when we were deciding where might we suggest these developments going. And if you think about it, it's like if you have to feed 3 kids, you got 3 lunch boxes, right? And you can put as much food in each of those lunch boxes as you want. Well, then one of the kids actually, whatever, their lunchbox is only half as big. We thought we had more land, but actually there's not as much land as we thought, because it turns out that was a city park. Oops. What that means is either we give the kids less food or we figure out another way to give those kids food. So as the land disappears from this map, that doesn't mean we need less housing. It means it's even more important that we find the right places to put this housing. So Stephen, you're exactly right. We need to not assume that everything is marked properly in here. But this is a starting point. This kind of sets the table for where might this development happen. And if we follow this, if everything in this plan is perfect, then great. But we know it's not going to be perfect. We're going to have to do more work.
Sam, I thought your lunchbox analogy was going to be not all 3 kids like eating the same things. Right? Like one of them's happy with carrots, but the other one will only eat Oreos. And I think that's also true at the local level, right? We had to try to distill some things down and generalize across municipal boundaries, that when each individual local planner or planning commission looks at this, they're going to be like, well, that's not quite what we said. And I think we know that, and over time we can refine some of this stuff.
All right, Ryan, what would you like me to show off first?
Yeah, well, so let's just take on the perspective of a township planner for a second. And let's look for all of the vacant and underutilized property that could be in a village center style format.
Excellent. So first I need to say there's actually 2 definitions of vacancy on here. So the first is if we go down to the parcel data filters, we have the assessors. Do we have any assessors on the call, by the way? Probably not. But we have the assessor's definition of vacancy, and I have these defined over here, right? So the assessors classify every parcel as like 204 means it's commercial vacant, 401 would be residential improved. So you can really instantly see all the assessor's definitions of vacancy right here. I didn't have the energy to view all 50,000 parcels and do a manual view. But for the parcels that are on the corridor specifically, I looked at every single one of those and we classified them as either vacant or underutilized. And so that's like that picture that Ryan showed of the commercial property where there was a few buildings, but it was mostly just parking lot. Great example of something that the assessor classifies as vacant, but we would call underutilized. So by using these toggles, we can see all the vacant and underutilized parcels. And then Ryan, you said the village center typology?
Yeah, let's try that. See
All
what
right,
comes.
we'll look at the village center typology. And then we also don't want to see anything with barriers, so we're gonna knock those out. And then also maximum 50% steep slopes, 50% wetland coverage. Okay, and that will help us. And then where's the public? Okay, and then we don't want things owned by conservation districts or federal property, privately owned, county owned, municipally owned. That will work. You know, you may choose whether to include school land in this. I would say yes, because schools have a lot of empty side yards. And then why don't we pick Garfield? So we'll just zoom in specifically on Garfield Township. So in Garfield Township, we categorize 61 parcels as looking good for the village center typology.
Yeah, you want to zoom in on one of those clusters.
And then when you're zoomed in, one thing you can do also is you can change the base map. So there's this button down here, and I'm reminding you up here of this. You can change the base map to look at the satellite view, or you can have more of a street map view. I like the light view because it really only shows the colors of the parcels, and I like that. But for the satellite view, let's take a look at this on the satellite view, right?
Yeah. And then
So we can,
do you want to try dropping in the wetland layer and just see if it impacts the properties you're looking at, just as an example? Yeah, there you go.
yeah. So, you know, it's hard to classify, like this parcel right here is pretty big and it's got some wetlands on it. So that's why we have this percentage slider for the wetlands right here. So that you can actually say, you know, actually 5% wetland coverage is fine. Or you could say, you know, the parcel, if I'm looking at a parcel that's only 1 acre big, then it has to be at least no more than 5% covered by wetland. Okay, so then, and also when you click on the parcel, you can see the public information available about the parcel. So, you know, the owner's name is public. We see that it's owned by TC Hammond LLC. We can see the number of acres, the assessor's class, and the information. And then we can see this extra information based on our analysis, whether it has barriers or slopes or et cetera.
Yeah, great. Sam, let's take on the perspective now of a developer. If you'll clear all the filters and zoom out, let's filter by, we want a minimum of 5 acres and a maximum of 20 acres. So let's assume I'm a small scale kind of single family developer and I want to build some cottage courtyards somewhere. So cute little cottages clustered around green space. So yeah, maximum 20 acres. And let's focus primarily on the stuff that we categorized as in buffer areas or on corridor. These are the places that are outside of the village center or the town center. And maybe in the hamlets too. Could do a shared community system. All right, so Based on this, Sam, I want to note those the tickers. I like to call them the tickers up in the upper left corner that says there's 90 parcels in view, 814 acres. Sam, give us a sense, if you're a developer, what might you be looking for in these 90 parcels? Like how, I know you've had some conversations with developers with different maps in other communities. How might you want to drill down even further to better understand where there are opportunities here?
Um, Typically, developers have specific development typologies with a decent envelope around that. So, when we see cottage courtyards, there can be a few different styles, but they might have a specific style. So they might know that the parcel has to be a certain width or a certain depth. For size between 5 and 20 acres, I mean, there is a ton of flexibility with that. And because there's only 90 parcels available, as a developer, what I would do is I would probably just look at these one at a time, and think about it. So like this yellow parcel here, clearly there's something else going on here. This looks like it might be a condominium shared space. So that's probably not going to be developed right there. But then we see over here, I'm looking at this map. It looks like maybe there's some development happening here, so it might not be right there. But let's pick this one, for instance. As a developer, I see that it looks like there's a church. Yep. So I see the building. I see that there's probably some elevation going on here, maybe. Yep. So there is some elevation here, right? But now I have a good sense of if I tried to buy the parcel outright and redevelop it, where might I be able to fit something? What would I consider? But luckily, I picked on the church, and there's this new wave of in God's backyard developments. So I would also consider approaching the church and asking, hey, do you want to maintain the church usage, but then find space for a cottage courtyard on the property as well? And that's something that we've seen happen a lot across the country. So that's how I would use this map is, it gives me the ability to filter down to just those 79 parcels or 90 parcels or et cetera. And I can consider those and I can think about what would fit well here. Because if I'm a cottage court developer and I only develop parcels that have that are between 5 and 20 acres, have no barriers, and let's get rid of these filters and just say, and have sewer service and water service, and are assessed as vacant. Yeah, sewer service, water service, no barriers, vacant, and are privately owned or owned locally. There's only 32 parcels that meet those criteria here, right? So if a developer is looking at these and saying, which of these do I want to develop on? That's a pretty good list of the easiest ones possibly to develop. But also the community should look at this list and they should say, wait a minute, if there's only 32 of these parcels and we have somebody who wants to buy, let's say, this parcel and develop it at 1 dwelling unit per acre, or maybe 2-acre lots, because they say, oh, it's far from the town center. The community can look at this and say, well, actually, we've only got 32 of these left. We would really like you to do something different on it because this is a really precious resource for us. So there's a lot of ways to look at it, both from the developer perspective and the community perspective.
That's great. Thank you, Sam. Who's got questions, or if you've got a scenario you want Sam to walk us through, if you've got a question and you're not sure how you would explore it on your own on this map, would love to hear from you.
Lisa, before we get to you, Sherry, I see in the chat that you did ask a question. And Sherry wants to know, are you targeting a certain demographic for these housing developments?
Oh, so that's going to be up to the community and on a developer by basis. I mean, we can tell you what the data says in the housing needs assessment. But generally what we see is each developer has its own kind of target market. And so we often see developers that are very good at doing 55 plus communities, and they sort of understand what that demographic is looking for. We have other developers who are very good at serving a young professional market, singles and couples with no kids. We've got developers who really focus on families with kids, and they know how to build the neighborhoods out. So I think that this map should be usable for all of those folks, and they're then going to filter land based on their own individual criteria for what's the product type that we build, how much land do we need in order to build that product type, is there sewer and water available if we need it, all those kinds of things.
If I could add to that also, with Housing North, of course, our mission is to serve the housing needs of the community in general. We know that there is unmet demand in certain buckets, and we typically call it the housing needs assessment, but with my capitalist hat on, I would call it a housing demand assessment. And developers generally want to build to where the demand is. Now, of course, we have our tensions, right, in Northwest Michigan in particular, where there just seems to be a lot of demand from folks that can afford to buy in the higher sectors. It's easier to build to, at those higher price points, but we aspire to that this information be used to make it easier to develop at lower price points, often with more density, because that can help drive costs down. I think that many developers, not just nonprofit, but for-profit developers, do aspire to reduce their build costs so they can sell at lower cost points or lower price points where there's a lot of demand. I mean, off the top of my head, trying not to speak out of turn, I know that if a developer can build a single family home for $300,000, there would be a line out there. There's a ton of demand in that sector and not enough supply to fill it, particularly not enough new construction supply to fill it. And then it's a different conversation going further down, but we definitely need more rental units for that, like 50% of AMI and lower. And that's kind of a different conversation and even more challenging problem to solve. But I have confidence that the developer community tries to go where the demand is.
And we have Lisa with a question.
Okay, so I am in one of the hamlet towns, Fife Lake Township. Well, you actually referenced Fife Lake Village, but we do not have widespread sewer. We don't have water. However, we have an interest from people, including myself, which I tried to go down this route on some land I own, to do the fourplex scenario. The barrier is the health department. Is there any work planned at the county level to try to compel the health department to not require a type 1 well system on a situation like a fourplex? Because that is the big barrier for those types of developments that's not on municipal water.
Yeah, great question, Lisa. I'm going to let Maxwell or Chris answer that. But what I want to preface with is just noting, hopefully this map helps to illustrate where more of those opportunities could be if we can both get local zoning aligned and county health department aligned. I don't know, Chris or Maxwell, do you have any input on that, or is it something we got to get back to them on?
Yeah, I think that's great feedback, Lisa. And as Ryan mentioned, I think that this is a tool for us to be able to look at those areas and have further conversation with regard to working with the health department and talking further about this issue. So thanks for raising it, and I think that this is something that we should have further discussion on.
So our zoning allows 500 square foot minimum single family homes and 300 square foot multifamily homes, as well as accessory dwelling units, except as well as we remove the requirement for road paving if you develop more than, I think it's like 4 lots or something like that. It used to say you had to pave it. So we have done our work in zoning to preserve our local community, but also allow for other types of situations. We have a lot of lots in 5-acre minimum districts that are 9.98 acres. And so we allowed ADUs as not to change that rural character, because there was a divide in the community. People didn't want to go down to a different density, which is why this legislation that's being proposed is not great for communities like mine. My community is open to doing things like that, but then people want to come in. I just talked to a developer last week who wants to do something like a fourplex, but they would have to do a type 1 system in order to make that work. So if any work you can do on that would be fantastic.
Great. Yeah, especially as you have interest from folks coming in. That's a great opportunity to have those conversations. So yeah, we can connect about that issue.
And good work on the zoning reform, Lisa. Well done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for your leadership.
Other questions? Anybody else want to see a particular scenario on the map? Do you have questions about the filters, the sources of data? No, nobody.
All right. Well, it's about not quite 11:15. If anything comes to mind while we're speaking, please raise your hand and we'll do our best to address questions. For folks who did not attend the initial or it was a January 9th meeting, if you would like the PowerPoint presentation that accompanied that, Ryan went through part of it, but we do have a full presentation we could send out. In the reminder, I did link the map, so it should be in all of your hands, and we encourage you to do some map surfing and use the map. I anticipate that we will get a link out on Housing North's website to the map, and also on Grand Traverse County. I'm not quite sure where that might live. Again, the data is static, but still we believe it will be a really useful tool.
And Susan, I just want to note that I think we mentioned it during the presentation, but there is also zoningatlas.org. If you're interested, Housing North and the county help to spearhead utilization of the National Zoning Atlas. Grand Traverse County has been fully mapped. So if you want to explore, what is allowed where under local zoning, there is all of the Zoning Atlas data available at zoningatlas.org. Sam's pulling it up right now. So, if you want to look at how many acres in your township or local community allow for ADUs or allow for another housing typology, that's all embedded here in this map. And so right now you'd have to toggle back and forth between this map and the corridor map. But hopefully the two of them get to be very useful tools in your arsenal over time.
Okay. So as topics come up, again, please feel free to reach out to me at Housing North, to Maxwell or Chris at Grand Traverse County. Flywheel, we appreciate your support and the amazing mapping program, or the amazing mapping tool that you put together for us. And if there's nothing else, I think we can sign off. Thank you, everybody, for being here and your interest in this really important topic.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation.
Bye, everybody.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.